Hi, it's Cayman Reynolds with the North American Honeybee Expo and, of course, my YouTube channel. This is a different live chat than what I typically have. And before anyone gets too alarmed, I want to say at this time there is currently not Tropilaelaps that we know of in the United States or in Canada. However, we dodged a bullet. It was close, and we have a lot to discuss. There's a lot of things that need to be done. It's important that the entire industry get together, whether you're a commercial beekeeper, a hobby beekeeper running a few hives, or someone like me in the middle somewhere. This industry is important to all of us in different ways. Honeybees produce so many wonderful health products. The pollination that they do is unlike any other creature. And those of us who have been doing this for decades, and some of us generationally, our families have been involved, this industry is precious to us. And I really think this is an important topic that needs to be discussed now. We can't wait. There's so much good work being done that needs to be highlighted, and that is what we are going to talk about. There's also some scary events happening that we need to talk about. And so I want to say thank you for joining, no matter what background or where you're coming from. And I want to bring in two special guests. One is Blake Shook with the Commercial Bee Supply and several other companies. And the other is Charles Linder of the Bee Cause Alliance. Both Charles and Blake are commercial beekeepers and run other businesses as well in the industry. They're good friends of mine, and it depends on which day it is how much I like them both. And I think that probably goes both ways. Gentlemen, thanks for joining me.
Glad to be here. Glad to be
Same,
here.
Cayman. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you for taking the time, because we all are very busy prepping bees for winter, prepping for the Bee Expo, taking care of issues around the industry. And part of the reason I wanted to have Blake and Charles is they are both very involved with different aspects of the industry, as we are as well, but we all kind of have our fingers, and sometimes they overlap into the similar things, but a lot of times different things. And so we're going to try to bring different approaches to this topic. And so without, talking too much about things around the main topic, Charles and Blake, let's get to the main topic, because there are several beekeepers that need to get back to their beehives right now, prepping for winter, and they don't want to hear my jokes today. So let's go at it.
Well, let's give you a quick rundown. I think most everybody who's popped on here knows what Tropilaelaps is. At least I hope you do. It's a small invasive mite that is originated on Apis dorsata in Southeast Asia. It has jumped species. It is hitting Apis mellifera throughout Europe and Asia right now. It's hitting pretty hard in Georgia, the country of Georgia, not the state. Right now, right next to Ukraine. Maggie Gill, I know she's coming to the Bee Expo. She's in Georgia trying to work on it. South Korea is dealing with it. Several areas over there. Sam Ramsey will tell you when it hit Pakistan, it wiped out Apis mellifera within 2 years. But one of the things we need to understand too is real quickly is that in some of those countries over there, Apis mellifera, what we call European honeybees, is not the only honeybee species they're using for honey production. So as we go forward and talk about this just a little bit, when people say they're surviving with it, we don't have any good information on how many of them are switching over to a different species or what's going on there.
So Charles, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we have some people in the comments wondering if we've clickbaited them, and I'm so.
Oh no, we're getting there.
No, we're getting there. So I never said it was here, but it was close. And we'll get to that momentarily. We're just getting a little bit of for people who don't know about it. So you're saying that there's other types of bees that they've switched to possibly.
They have, and I'm going to get right back to that. So bear with me here, but I want to set the stage just a little bit as we go forward. Most of us in the bee industry are well aware that Sam Ramsey and University of Auburn and Project Apis M, PAM are doing a ton of great research on Tropilaelaps and potential treatment methods and how we're going to handle them when they get here. We have been laboring under an assumption that is sometime in the future. And unfortunately, an event happened this summer that's just scared the bejeebers out of me, as well as quite a few other people. I think most of us really felt for the longest time that this was something that was 3, 5, 6, 7 years out, or out there, but nobody was actually super concerned with it. So I have learned, and I'm not going to give all the details yet because I don't want to get people in trouble. But over the course of the summer, there was actually a container ship that was stopped. They did a port call, which, for those of you who don't know, when a ship comes across, they have to get permission to enter the port. They advise the port of any issues they have before they dock. And in this port call, they advised that they had a swarm of bees on. They contacted the state apiarist. They sent somebody out. The Coast Guard ferried them out to a boat, 25 miles, is what I'm being told, offshore, 25 or 30 miles out. And they destroyed the colony. Okay, everything worked beautifully. The ship, the quartermaster caught it. The dock people cooperated. The state apiarist was on the ball. They went out and destroyed this colony. The colony was actually Apis cerana. Okay, an Apis cerana is a smaller than normal honeybee. It's about 2/3 the size of our typical Apis mellifera, and it is somewhat of a native host for Tropilaelaps. So they have become accustomed to it. I won't say they're thriving with it, but they do survive with it. I don't have a lot of data on how well they handle it. The colony was destroyed, and it was taken to lab for testing, and Tropilaelaps was found on that colony. What I don't know is whether they found actual live mites, which mite species it was, because there are 2 or 3 species of Tropilaelaps. And I don't know whether they did a DNA test or whether they found a number of live mites yet. They're not releasing that data at the moment. I've been told we're not going to tell you that. That will be up to the USDA to report. And of course, the problem is, of course, we have a government shutdown right now. So USDA and APHIS are not answering questions, not answering emails. But one of the things we also have to understand that in general, the USDA's and APHIS reporting of near misses and invasive species is really not up to spec. They don't issue a press release when this kind of stuff happens. They have an annual report out. I've seen it once or twice. It's really hard to find, and if you don't know what you're looking for, you're not even going to know it exists. For example, Randy Oliver was telling me about Apis florea and how often it comes over. Apis florea is a real small honeybee, and we were speculating on whether they have Tropilaelaps, but they're finding 5 or 6 nests of Apis florea every year. So this is not a super unusual event that bees come over on a container. But it is very disturbing that a colony with Apis cerana got so close to our coast. And the reason it's disturbing, even though the system worked perfectly this time, we're also aware that there were some swarms, shall we say, picked up out of the ports over the course of the summer, both in Maryland and in Georgia that I'm aware of. These were swarms that appeared in the port facility. They may have been from a U.S. colony. They may have absconded from a ship. We don't know. But instead of being properly handled and exterminated, they were actually given to small-scale beekeepers to take outside the port. So these types of issues are greatly disturbing to me. We have a potential for Tropilaelaps to come over on a ship. We had believed that, hey, it can't survive without brood. That's what you hear all the time. It's got to have brood. It's got to have active brood. It did. It made it here. It got very, very close, and that is very scary.
So sounds like there's a little bit of an echo. There we go. I think it's better. So this obviously is going to have cause a lot of issues. We don't fully understand. There's a gentleman commenting that it's been in some of these places for a long time, and we have no way of knowing fully just how long it's been in some of these countries, and we're still trying to ascertain a lot of that information. Like you mentioned, there's several organizations that are putting in a lot of work. Auburn, Sammy Ramsey, Project APIS-M, and I want to say a big thank you to Fira Science and Maggie Gill. The photo on the front of the thumbnail for this video actually was sent to us from Fira Science to use, and they've sent us a lot of information. They're going to be presenting at our expo so that we can have a lot of firsthand knowledge from these beekeepers. And it's a group from, some of them are in Canada, some of them are in the UK, and various countries that are working together to figure out how to properly monitor the levels, to also test treatments like Formic Pro and other products that we commonly have in the United States to see if they're effective and if they are semi-effective or whatever. And so there's a lot of work being done, and sometimes these are well-funded projects, and sometimes folks are just donating a lot of their own money and time and energy into this. And that's part of the reason I wanted to have this discussion, as the North American industry being quite a large part of the global beekeeping industry. We need to also not only educate ourselves and prevent getting this here in the U.S. and Canada as best as possible, or Mexico. We also need to put forth that energy, not only education, but hey, let's maybe help our European brethren be able to discover what's going on over there so that they can help us and we can help them find ways to mitigate this problem, hopefully before it ever makes landfall. Now, personally, what I would like to see, and I know that's everyone else feels the same way here, is we'd like to experience what Australia experienced with varroa mites. That would be fantastic. I think after the United States got varroa mites, it was almost 40 years or something until they received them. But things have changed a lot in 40 years on how much we import from other countries. And you just don't know. There's so many ports between Canada and the United States. There's just a staggering amount of ports to watch.
360 in the United States and some 570 in Canada, and another 170 in Mexico.
So that's a whole lot of ports to watch, and it's going to take a lot of beekeepers, doing the right things, because as much as we would love the entities that you mentioned to be able to perfectly monitor everything, it's a huge problem, and it's very difficult for them to do that. And as beekeepers, we need to be at our best as well, and do the best that we can to monitor and also have some protocols. Because right now, Charles, if let's say Tropilaelaps gets here, what's to keep things from maybe going to where we get a slash and burn scenario like Australia did with
well, there's a couple things we need to be real clear here. And it's understanding, and this applies to Canada as well as the United States. You mentioned the plan, but let's talk about the basic rules as this works right now. USDA and APHIS are technically not allowed to do anything as a preventative measure. APHIS is not allowed to get involved, which is APHIS, for those you don't know, is Animal Plant Health Inspection Services. Great organization, okay? They're worried about invasive species as we don't know anything about. So they've got 500 things on their list. I have one, and my one right now is Tropilaelaps. But APHIS can't even get involved until Tropilaelaps has been identified here by an independent laboratory, and at which time then they roll out the guard to try to fix things. We ran into this with the yellow-legged hornet in Georgia. Before APHIS could even get involved, it had to go to an independent lab at the University of Georgia to be identified. And that was before they could do anything. Canada is under similar rules. CFIA has some outstanding rules that said, hey, we can't do anything about preventative stuff. We can only deal with it when it gets here. And there are Canadians who can talk about that more. But within the U.S., my understanding is there is a trophy prevention plan, but we're not allowed to see it. We don't know what's on it. So I've got some stories, I've got some rumors, I've got things I can't release, but bottom line is the plan is not sufficient. And Eamon, you mentioned Australia there, and there are two lessons we really, really, really need to learn from Australia. One, as you said, how to prevent it for 20 or 40 years. Every year we delay this gives Sam Ramsey and Jeff Williams and Pam and Maggie time to find a solution for us. But the second most important one that I'm concerned with is the catastrophic failure when they did find varroa. Australia really, really messed things up when they did find it. They started burning hives without reimbursing beekeepers. I asked the APHIS personnel this year what the plan to reimburse beekeepers is if we had to destroy hives. Their comment was ELAP. You can file for an ELAP claim. The whole idea that we have a sufficient plan when they get here to contain this and manage it is insufficiently crazy. And that's my frustration right now.
So we had a question from a commercial beekeeper, and this one's for Blake Shuck. And thanks for patiently waiting, Blake. Blake's quieter than Charles and I, and so he poor guy doesn't get much of a chance. But there's a question in regards to pollination contracts as this commercial beekeeper looks towards the future. Possibly having Tropilaelaps come in and wreck maybe his numbers to be able to do almonds or cranberries or any type of pollination. Should there be something built in for that type of issue? What is your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a good question. Let me back up a little bit to just give some high level comments and thoughts on this news that we're hearing. We're going to hear things like this nonstop until it eventually gets here. And hopefully that's years in the future. I think this one is scary. That this is probably not the first time Serrana or Tropilaelaps on a Serrana species has come into the port or come close. For every one we find, there's probably 10, 20, or 30 that we don't find. If that swarm had been somewhere out of sight, it probably never would have been identified. So, I don't want to be a pessimist. We think it's going to arrive in the U.S. at some point. We don't know when. We don't know how. But I think what we can do as an industry is we can, as a hobbyist, you can educate yourself, and you can support organizations that are working on this. As a hobbyist, there's not a whole lot you can do personally, but you can support those or get involved if you want, the organizations that are funding research, hosting speakers, working legislatively to tackle this. And then the last thing you can do, and this goes back to the education, is learn to identify the trophy mite, because sometimes these things show up first in a small scale operation, especially if you're near a port. If you're near the coast, you're the front lines at identifying the trophy mite. And so that's not good news for you, but it's helpful to the rest of us if you really learn to identify a trophy mite and keep an eye out for that. Commercially, to the question that was asked, Cayman, this is certainly something I spend a lot of time thinking about. And, we're always looking at the risks for us as commercial beekeepers and what are we going to do? And I would say that this is the first year that me and my team have had serious conversations about, okay, what's our plan? And we haven't waited for the government to come up with a plan or recommendations. We've said, okay, for our business and our operation, if Tropy gets here next year, what are we going to do about it? And so I think taking as much ownership and responsibility as we can to each of us from a business perspective, developing a plan is very important. And so we've done that. We've said, okay, if it hits, here's our strategy. Here's what we're going to do to try to survive. So I think we all have to do that. Pollination contracts, it's not common to build, I'm going to call it acts of God clauses into pollination contracts. I think you can, if the grower will agree to it, then yeah, I don't know that I would limit it just to trophy mites, but you might put, if an act of God prevents you from having the bees needed for pollination, you're not held liable. We often do put things into contracts saying that we're not liable for crop production. So we're not liable, no matter what your crop turns out to be, we're not liable for it. But if you're nervous, I haven't heard of anyone doing that yet, but if you're nervous about trophy in particular, you could see if a grower would agree to an act of God clause. So that's my answer to that direct question. Overarching, that's my recommended approach for hobby beekeepers. And then for commercial beekeepers, it's certainly educating yourselves helping legislatively come up with solutions, but then have a plan for your own business.
Mhm. And that's what we all want to see, is just more beekeepers to get involved. No one of us has a perfect answer for any of this stuff, and honestly, it takes a lot of energy and a lot of work from multiple areas around the country. And so we're hoping to see this be a uniting thing, as we are all concerned about this happening, whether, again, 2 months from now or 20 years. Well, that'd be awesome. We want to see people get involved together. The Bee Expo is really not a commercial focused conference. It's just a big bee show that showcases a little bit of everything. We try to showcase everything that we can, and are constantly growing because of that. However, we can't be all things to all people. And so there's other groups out there, like the honey producers that I'll be at here in December, and other entities as well. Like we've already mentioned some of them that are doing some great work. And so we really just want to be able to help one another and have a smooth amount of transition of knowledge from scientists to beekeepers of all levels. And so that it's not taking us a long time to figure these things out or to have plans, but there is definitely no perfect way to go about this, because every single beekeeper in the industry could put forth 100% of their energy towards this, and we still get Tropilaelaps 2 months from now.
That's a concern.
And so that's part of the problem is, there are folks that say, well, there's no matter what we do, we're going to get it anyways, which is the wrong approach to look at it. We need to give it our best shot. And if we still end up getting it soon, that's just how it happens. But I'm a fighter. I try to be anyways, except when it comes to my wife, and I just give up and say, honey, you're right, and I was wrong. Yeah, she's a fighter too, and so she's great. A lot of this stuff that we do is because Laurel is heavily involved in the decision making of our exposition. But we want to be a facilitator with the show, and that is why I'm going to show this really quick, and then we'll get right back on topic. And I want to highlight a couple of comments that will kind of go into this. So I'm going to share my screen real quick. Let's see here.
There's a couple comments I'm reading here, and they're really good questions. This colony was alive,
Okay.
so it's not dead bees or a pile of dead bees. We do have some researchers, and I'm not going to mention names because they're working on papers right now. But they have shown that Tropilaelaps actually lives longer on dead bees than it does on live bees, as long as 10 days in the bottom of a package of dead bees. Part of that suspicion is that dead bees are giving up their bodily fluids for them to survive just a little longer. So concerns all around on that aspect. But this colony was an active colony that somehow took up residence. The other thing that's interesting, and I just learned this based on this case, is that many of the ships that come over from Asia start in the north. They actually started in Nova Scotia or New York and worked their way down. Apparently, they don't want to battle the Atlantic current, so they start on the north side and kind of float their way down the coast. So that was something I learned this year. We'd always assumed it'd be Florida or Jacksonville or Mexico that get hits first, but it turns out the northern areas are where the most of the Asian boats start.
Interesting. I'm just going to share this really quick, and then there's some good questions from Philip Rains and Veritas and others, and we'll just kind of rapidly go through those. And
good question from Phil Rains. I was supposed to give him a shout out, so there you got it.
There you go, Phil. So can you guys see my screen? Chris, everyone, can you guys see that all right?
Yeah.
Well, that's the map.
What did you say?
I see the map of the expo coming up.
That's right. And so this is the floor plan. There's a few things that need to be changed. I don't have the completely updated version, but this is pretty much 99% rock solid. If you guys will notice up in here, and it may be hard for you all to see on your end, but we have the Bee Cause Alliance, which Charles Linder is a part of, and I'm one of the members, not the main guys, but just I support them and stuff. And we have the honey producers right here, and companies like Cowan. Of course, you have Dayton's big booth here and several others. But right up here, there's going to be a lounge for commercial beekeepers, and several Project Apis several commercial companies in this area. And this is something that we're trying different this year, is for commercial beekeepers, to help them have a space kind of their own. And it's for the hobby and smaller beekeepers. This is not a diss to you guys at all. The whole space is your space. But when the commercial beekeepers come in, a lot of them are wanting to talk business, pollination contracts. It's a totally different animal, and they want to be able to talk those conversations. And this is kind of a meetup for them to be able to find each other and be able to have those conversations. And so we're going to be working with the honey producers and anybody else who's willing to in the commercial industry to try to get them there, so we can have more conversations, Tropilaelaps related, and honey prices and stuff. Charles and several others will have commercial talks at our show. We're going to have, if not the best, some of the best talks on Tropilaelaps at a show for this year. And so just anybody who's knows a commercial beekeeper who's interested in coming, have them reach out to us. We want you there and all that jazz. Yeah. And there'll be more information coming in regards to that.
I understand, for everybody listening, we talk about being commercial beekeepers, and that's great, but we're all just beekeepers. We just happen to have a lot more of them, but we're the same as the guy with 10 or 15 or 20. We still have the same day-to-day problems in every single hive.
So we have that question from Philip Rains is, will we freeze all migratory beekeepers if this makes landfall? And I'm not sure. Do we have an answer for that, Charles?
No, we don't have an answer. I will tell you that in 1994, when Varroa destructor hit Florida, Georgia stopped all interstate movement of bees very quickly and created some major headaches up and down the coast. You had to slide around the Florida panhandle, go up through Alabama, Tennessee, and up and around in order to get to the upper Northwest. I expect, this is my personal opinion, and I'm talking out my ass. I don't have any documentation on this, so feel free to throw rocks at me. But I suspect that we would see several states that the Department of Ag would consult with their inspectors, and their inspectors would say, stop bee movement. Blake and I were talking the other day, and he had a great phrase for this, and that is, what was that, Blake? It was something about we move more now than we ever did.
There were so many good ones, Charles. I'm not sure which one you're referencing. But I think quarantines historically haven't worked in the U.S. I mean, we don't have any good historical evidence of quarantines working. I think the scale of impact will be when and where tropy hits. No offense to, the New Jersey beekeepers, but if it hits in New Jersey and in, October, and they freeze the state of New Jersey, that's not going to have any effect on the commercial industry, by and large. If it hits in Florida in January and they freeze the state of Florida, that's going to dramatically affect the entire beekeeping industry, the almond pollination industry. If it hits in California any time of year, that's going to, I can't even quite, it's going to be a battle between the almond growers and the apiary inspectors and the USDA. So, when and where it hits will determine, I think, just how severe this issue is. I also think that, it's very hard to quarantine bugs. And it's very hard to quarantine beekeepers. Yeah. And beekeepers are smart. Most of us not me, but most beekeepers that are a few years older than I have lived through quarantines. And, they're going to get their bees out. If one state next door has tropy mites, you're going to see all the bees exit the state next to it, to try to avoid a quarantine. And so it's hard to control. And I wish we could have a more open dialogue with authorities to address what a realistic mitigation strategy would be, because I don't think just shutting down state borders is going to be it.
So, yeah, Blake's got an interesting point, and there's a question here from Via Honeybees on a prevention plan. We are outlining one. We are trying to get attention right now from the Secretary of Ag to develop funding for an actual prevention plan, and we could use some more input on it. But that does include, one of the things that we have to have is, what is the national movement plan? And we'd also like to see them set aside funding for reimbursement if we decide to eradicate some hives. We want to make sure that whoever loses their hives is made whole and not tempted to smuggle their hives out in the middle of the night thinking that they can save them.
So, Charlie, we have a question from our favorite Canadian beekeeper. Has this officially been confirmed and all that kind of stuff?
No, and when I talked to an expert at the USDA over the weekend, they would not even commit to saying that they were going to announce it before their annual review. But I have been told that they have told some of the apiary inspectors that there will be a press release as soon as they come back from whatever break this ends up being. Right now, if you don't know, the House, they haven't approved a funding bill through the Senate. So all of USDA and APHIS personnel, except for very essential personnel, are not in the office.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I've had just today a lot of messages. There's several people that are not just an average beekeeper like me that know about this and have known about this. It's just a matter of it going through the right. I guess they have their protocols of how they do things, mm-hmm. and which maybe there's a reason for that. I'm not in on all that information. All I know is as a beekeeper, again, kind of like Blake alluded to before, it'd be nice if we had more conversations and dialogue with these people. It's not that we want to go in and really be a disruptor. We just want to be able to have a conversation with, honestly, the bodies that have a lot of control over what happens to our industry. Because we're the beekeepers that if it comes in and they decide, well, we're going to do a burn thing, and it's in Tennessee, and we're going to burn everybody's hives, and Cayman's in the line of fire. All of his hives were because I'm registered with the state of Tennessee. They where my bee yards are at. They'll be showing up at my place and burning all my stuff. And they've done that in New Zealand. They've done that in Australia. So we would like to have conversations where, okay, maybe it's confirmed that it does land in New Jersey. And for those who just came in, it is not in the United States. There was a swarm of bees that weren't Apis mellifera killed, euthanized off the coast of New Jersey, and there was Tropilaelaps. And so we're highlighting how quickly this all could change. So I want to be able to have conversations to where before it happens, let's say, again, it comes in New Jersey, but at that point, maybe it's already been here for a little while. A commercial beekeeper has it, doesn't even realize it yet, and takes their bees to the almonds or somewhere else. Maybe they overwinter their bees in Florida. And by then, it's beekeeping. They've shot a swarm or two off, or just a couple of bees flew out and flew into another hive at a different beekeeper half a mile away or whatever. I don't know. And now Tropilaelaps is out of the bag. And if it's already too far to be controlled, should we be burning hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of hives for something that we can't put the toothpaste back in the container?
Yeah. There's a couple of things I want to point out here. A lot of people seem to be concerned about the official release of the data. One of the things you have to understand here is that USDA and APHIS are dealing with invasive species every single day, literally a dozen times a day. So to them, this is a very minor event. This is, oh yeah, it's Tuesday. Guess that happened. So I'm not sure that they had the same impetus to notify the industry that we as beekeepers do. We as beekeepers have a whole different mindset. So that may delay us. Of course, government shutdowns are not helping us whatsoever. So I'm not sure how all that's going to roll out. It doesn't change the story. The reality is we need to be aware of the potential impact if it comes through a port, or whether it comes through Canada or Mexico, doesn't matter. Do we have a plan in place that beekeepers are aware of and understand and agree with? And the answer to that at the moment is no. So how do we get that done, and how does that move forward? That's really the key takeaway from this whole discussion is we're not quite prepared yet, and we better start moving.
And so, in regards to, there's people asking about different types of treatments and various things. And when I went to Denmark to talk to some of the Georgian beekeepers that were dealing with this, and also talking to some of the researchers that are over there working with them on their bees, and why I think it's really interesting to hear what's going on in the country of Georgia is because some of the beekeepers I talked to, one in particular runs 2,000 hives of bees, and they move their bees to different flows, different elevations, and they run big hives like we do here in the United States for honey production and producing bees. And so versus let's say Thailand, excuse me, where it's a very different management style. Right now, it's really not mine to say what they're finding out on this stuff. Some of the things that they've told me is preliminary. They're still collecting the data, and they're going to be producing that at my expo. And I don't fully understand all of it. And they just got back again from there for the last rounds of stuff. So a lot of this information is new, and there's several different groups working with this. And that's why I'm very thankful that Project Apis M is going to be there. The University of Auburn is also going to have a booth at our show, combined with the Penn State booth. And so Robin Underwood, Dr. Robin Underwood, and we couldn't get Dr. Jeff Williams this year, but we did get Dr. Maggie Gill. And I just really like the way that she talks to beekeepers. It's like one beekeeper talking to the other. It's not just her, but the rest of her team are doing just phenomenal work over there, and they're really doing nuts and bolts testing. But we need to give them as much time as possible, and they're really doing this on a shoestring budget. Virus is, and so we'll be announcing this more into the future. But the Bee Expo will be making a decent donation to Virus Science, and several of the companies at our show have already pledged to do so as well. To try to help support this and help us get that education. So, some people are, in the comments saying various things about, well, this is clickbait and all that kind of stuff. This is not. It is an attempt to get people involved. There's no point in, pointing fingers about this political party's not doing this job. The USDA is all bad. The commercial beekeepers are the problem. Everyone just needs to stop treating. That's going to fix everything. No, it's not. The commercial beekeepers can't do that. Almost every commercial beekeeper I've talked to has tried at one point or the other. And the commercial bee industry is a very different animal. And whether we like it or not, unless you grow all of your own food, you're very dependent on commercial beekeeping. And so whether it's almonds, whether it's oranges, whether it is clover seed production, onion seed production, a lot of your brassicas are pollinated by commercial beekeepers. So even if you like to garden, a lot of those seeds are pollinated by commercial beekeepers. And so those guys taking a massive hit is not only going to affect the beekeeping industry, it's going to affect our availability for seeds and our availability for food. And of course, knowing most of the commercial beekeepers who are in the kind of involved with stuff, most of them are just family operations. A lot of their children or their grandpa, they're all involved in just family operations that just want to be able to do what they've been doing for 2 or 3 generations. Very nice people. So we don't want to see them hurt. Another thing I see different with this problem, and many of you probably haven't taken the time to study the changes of what happened when tracheal mites and varroa mites came into the United States. It reshaped the industry. It changed a lot of things. This totally has the ability to do the same thing. But one of the gifts that we have right now that we didn't have back then is the ability to have these conversations this quickly and to be able to get information out and to be able to communicate with other countries better. And we didn't do a super good job of adopting some of the information from Europe into the United States as quickly as we could have to help our bees be successful. And I also am talking to a lot of Australian beekeepers who some of them are doing quite well with it, and they've adopted a lot of the European and American and Canadian techniques for controlling varroa, but some of them are doing what some Americans are still doing and not treating enough for their area. And so we want to be able to constantly be able to get that information out. We want everyone to be involved. And whether your focus is like, I want to be a more natural beekeeper, I'm going to use maybe some light amounts of acid, oxalic acid or formic acid, I'm going to do genetics. That's all great. We need people from all angles working on this. But what we can't continue to do is break up into these individual groups and not work together on these issues. We can totally work together, even though someone's wanting to run top bar hives versus a typical Langstroth hive. So that's really what the Bee Expo is pushing for. And our goal is to work with the other conferences as much as we can.
Let me ask, I want to ask Blake a question here if I could for a second.
You can't,
Blake,
Charles.
Cayman mentioned that, Varroa hit and tracheal mites, those were both big hits on the industry. Overall, from an industry perspective, what would you expect if we hit severely here? The overall impact would be.
That's the $500 million question, and I was a little more concerned when we first started hearing about Tropy than I am now. I think that the fact that they seem to at least struggle to survive in broodless hives for extended periods of time is encouraging. That tells me that, it sounds like there are some instances where they do survive, but it sounds like it's limited and they struggle a bit in broodless colonies, depending on the species. But if that's true, and I see you frowning there,
No,
if that's true, then that gives me some hope for states where you do go broodless. And certainly if you can go broodless and hit them with a formic acid treatment, it seems like that could be an effective control method to essentially eliminate the trophy mites from a hive. With Varroa, we can't eliminate them. You can treat all you want, you can go broodless. You're still going to have enough residual Varroa mites to repopulate the country with Varroa mites easily every spring. With Tropy, as we do, is Tropy, if they really struggle to survive in broodless periods, and you can hit them with formic to clean up any remaining trophy, you might be able to get in a situation, I hope, where we're essentially eradicating them for most of the country every year. Then it's just a matter of how quickly they're able to reproduce and repopulate in the coming year. And states like all our friends down in Florida is where it's going to get really challenging. But if trophy are that big of a deal, you're going to suddenly see all the Florida commercial beekeepers overwintering in indoor sheds where they can create a broodless period, because that's going to be the only way to survive. So assuming that they truly can't survive in broodless periods and formic continues to be an effective treatment, we could see a scenario where we are able to largely control them in mass numbers in a large part of the country. And then, it's a factor then of how quickly they repopulate from feral colonies or hobby beekeepers in southern areas where you don't go broodless. So that's not really an answer, other than.
Do you think the economics of commercial beekeeping now can withstand this?
I think commercial beekeepers will find a way. I think it depends on when and where it hits. If it hits in January, February in California, right as we're coming out of winter and the bees are all brooding up, we're all in for a pretty awful spring. We could be in a situation where we're losing most of the country's hives over the course of that spring and summer and fall.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the when and where is a big piece of it. So operations like mine, we're prepping, if it happens and it hits in California in February, the first thing we're doing is we're jerking our bees out of California and we're getting them into a cold storage shed and making them go broodless, hitting them with formic, taking immediate action to try to eliminate the trophy mites.
Sure.
So to take it to a hobby standpoint, some of them are like, well, this is all fine and dandy, but how does this affect me? Unless you're really sustainable, it's going to affect you, because if you need to buy bees every year, a lot of times that's coming from California, Florida, the southern states,
and Queens.
or Queens, and again coming from a lot of times these areas. And some people are like, well, I'm sustainable, that shouldn't be a problem. But if Tropilaelaps makes it to your place, and it eventually will, if once it gets here, it'll cross the nation, and you lose your bees, some people are like, well, I'll be able to catch swarms. Swarms were devastated. Wild bees were devastated when Varroa came over. It just took the knees out from under wild bees. People are talking about resistant genetics and stuff, and it's not that you can't get some resistance, but these things take time, and a lot of times uh, bees really rely on genetic diversity, and it takes a lot of time for these things. And this is kind of what frustrates me the most about this whole concept of, well, just everyone just let things go and nature will work itself out. Even if that is the case, there's no guarantee it's going to happen within our lifetimes or our children's lifetimes. Um, and what does nature find an equilibrium? Does that mean they're able to be run like hobbyists would like to run their bees for honey production, even if it's just a super or so? Nature might find a balance to where only colonies that are the size of a cantaloupe, that swarm often, are able to keep ahead of something. And if that's what nature finds is the equilibrium, then that's what we have. That doesn't bode well for commercial beekeepers or for any hobbyist who wants to take a kind of a relaxed approach on beekeeping, that doesn't want to get into their bees, but maybe every 3 to 4 weeks.
You're making a statement there that I take exception with, Keeman, and that is, that is equilibrium. Everybody seems to want to use this concept of predator and host, and they're going to strike a balance. That is not what the real world shows us. The real world shows us that most species have been wiped out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Some do, some manage that, but the majority of species get wiped out. If you put a bunch of rabbits in the lion pen, the rabbits aren't going to figure out how to be lion proof. It's not going to happen. Okay. It's just a matter of time before they're all gone. That's the way it works. And this is a good chance that that's a possibility here. So we can't assume that there is an equilibrium point.
So, Chris, can you bring up Robin Underwood's post about her booth and the Auburn booth at the booth number 810? Definitely, if you guys are interested, there you go. Thank you, Chris. Stop by. Dr. Underwood is one of our speakers this year as well, and workshops. And so her and several of the other folks at that booth are going to have a lot of good information, not only in regards to this, but spotted lantern flies and how that's we have them in Tennessee now. I haven't seen any personally yet, but I know people that have. And so one of the things that is always going to be a constant, there's going to be invasive species, whether it involves beekeepers or ag or whatever. We don't a lot of times like it. I see people saying, something should be done about this, but as long as people continue to buy stuff that comes from other countries, there's going to be stuff imported, and it's just not that simple. It would take a long time to fix all this. So let's see here. We have several good questions. Oh, so Ian Stepler, I'm Canadian. It says I'm Canada, so we know Ian's not Canada, so it must be I'm Canadian. We have the Tropilaelaps mite committees here at their national government and academic level currently working to address the Tropilaelaps threat. What is happening in the USA regarding boots on the ground and that kind of stuff? And didn't you allude, Charles, that they're not really releasing a lot of that stuff to us at this point, or what's going on?
Yeah, at the moment, and working with APHIS and USDA, as far as boots on the ground prevention, I don't see anything. There may be something that I'm not aware of, but I'd like to think I'm fairly well connected. And prevention is just not part of the policy. There is a whole lot of work and a whole lot of funding. We have a 7721 program and a couple other financial programs to fund research on how to handle them once they get here. And that's what you see Jeff Williams and Auburn and Pam working on. And it's great stuff. But to try to say we're going to draw a line in the sand and work on a prevention plan, that's currently not in the works to the best of my knowledge anywhere. We are trying to get one, but I don't see it in place yet. I don't know in Canada what they're doing or not doing on that.
So, and there's a comment from someone I think that just hopped in. I'm going to butcher this name, Milton Ra from Europe, and is asking if Tropilaelaps has been detected in the U.S. It was not. It was in a shipping container coming to the U.S. They detected it before it got here, euthanized it. And so, this video is to talk about what's being done, what needs to be done, what we're doing at the Expo to talk about this. We're trying to just get all the beekeepers to be aware that this isn't something that could be years off in the future, or something that we just have to sit back and we're just going to kind of just let it happen. And when it happens, it happens. I think we all need to be very proactive in not only our education, but communicating all the way from the commercial beekeeper that runs 40,000 hives all the way down to the beekeeper who just started a year ago and is looking to be the best beekeeper that they can be. So that's what our YouTube channel is for. We don't have all the information. As far as like treatments, there's some exciting stuff coming out of Georgia. Maggie Gill will be sharing that. We'll also have Dr. Jeff Pettis sharing some information as well. And so it's not that there's not some possibilities, but right now there's a lot more questions than answers, and we need as much time as possible to give these beekeepers and these researchers time and the resources to be able to serve us like they do so well, and be able to give us tools and education on how to properly deal with this when that day comes. And that's what this conversation is about. We want folks to be aware and to share this in your bee club. I'm a cup half full type person. I know some people like, oh man, if this hits, I'm just getting out. That's not me at all. If God decides I'm going to live to be 90 years old, I'm going to be dealing with this thing for as long as it gets here to when I die. And Charles is I've already told you, you're going to have to survive a couple more decades because you're not going to make me take over for you.
Yeah. Ian has one more thing on there that probably needs to be.
Ian again.
Well, he says, what is the call to action here? And that's a legitimate question that we probably need to understand. We have a group called the Bee Cause Alliance. It is a fairly new group. We are working on a prevention plan. But all of that aside, get a hold of the ABF, the AHPA, your local state organizations, CSBA, whatever group you're facilitated with. Make sure you understand that you want them to support a prevention plan. Mm-hmm. And if you happen to live next door to a senator or a congressman, call one of us. We need his address. We need to talk to him. We do need some political attention on this. There's no doubt about it.
And we don't need it after the fact. I mean, it'll be nice after the fact, but that's kind of like the way CCD was, though. I mean, it's like, it's great. You see all these new beekeepers come into the industry after, the bees are collapsing and all this kind of stuff. But we really would like to have some energy before it ever gets here. That would be great. And so if you do know any senators, House of Representatives, or somebody who's related to them, we won't show up on their doorstep picketing like a bunch of crazy people. I don't want to go to jail. But I definitely want you guys to send that information you can send it to us, and I can pass it on to organizations that can properly handle that. At the North American Honeybee Expo, we want to get involved, but we don't do everything. That's where, the Bee Cause Alliance and other groups out there that are doing great work. And there's several groups. They just need the support. They need you to get involved with them. It doesn't mean you have to go and do the work yourself, but the numbers matter. And getting everybody,
tell them what's important to you, what really matters.
Right. And nothing changes in this industry without the demand being there. Really, it doesn't. We have people ask us, about products, and this is a little bit different, but how are we going to get these products out to the market? I'm like, well, folks, if they want it, the demand's going to be there, and they're going to spend money on it, and they're going to put their attention to it. We see this with products all the time at our expo, and all of a sudden they're just everywhere. But it's not because it's just some magic. The demand is there. The people speak. They say, this is what we want, and it makes a difference. It turns heads. These companies notice. The Bee Expo is a great place to do that, and there's other places as well. But we've seen it work time and time again at our show because the companies show up, and then there's someone like me. There's someone with 5 hives that say, hey, this is an awesome suit. We love this. Or, hey, could you do this? Or they're able to talk directly. And that's something that we have struggled with in the bee industry because we're all spread out. And we're a small industry. And so it's so critical that we use our small industry wisely, and we put that energy into a laser focus initiative to address this Tropilaelaps problem. So it doesn't matter what your role is in this. If it's just literally getting your bee club to reach out, maybe like you said, Charles, a congressman, senator, maybe you know somebody. That could be massive. It could be the one thing that we really need. Or it could be reaching out to Project APISM, the Bee Cause Alliance, any of these groups, getting involved, supporting them in whatever way that you can. And that's why at our show this year, we're going to have that information on display. You're going to hear the lectures, you're going to see the great work that these people are doing. And then we're going to show you, if you want it, whether it's get involved. Heck, we have some people that are literally flying to Georgia. There's some Canadians that have done it, and they're going over there and they're getting hands-on experience with the Tropilaelaps problem. So there's something all of us can do. Get involved. If nothing else, be the squeaky wheel, because the squeaky wheel gets the grease.
All it takes is one senator or congressman or senator or congressman's wife who really understands this and makes an issue out of us can make the difference for us. And that's what we need. So
we have several other questions, but we have a limited amount of time left. And Blake, I know you've got schedules and stuff going on. Blake, as always, been very kind and quiet in the background. We appreciate you putting up with Charles and me taking the lead on this. But Blake is very involved too. Blake, you're involved with how many organizations? Do you know off the top of your head? It's too many to count, probably.
It's a couple.
It's almost like he's cloned himself and he's in different places at once. But honestly, when I went to the honey producers 2 years ago, and I'm going back again this year, I was really impressed there were so many really nice folks there. Some of these guys, you're talking to them, just beekeeper to beekeeper. And then you go in and I'll talk to Blake. He's like, that guy's running like 30,000 hives, right? And like, what? They look like they could be a door greeter at Walmart. And so there's a lot of great commercial families out there, but they're quietly working in their field with their craft that they love. There's a lot of commercial beekeepers that could get involved too. And I think that we need to create a way to get them more involved and appreciate them. I talk to a lot of these guys. Some of them are very wealthy. They've been successful, and they write donations all the time for different bee clubs or for research and all kinds of stuff. But after talking to a lot of them in regards to my show or just asking them about different things they've been involved with, I think the number one thing that is a problem is most of them never get shown real appreciation for what they've contributed to the bee industry. And I think a lot of them would get more involved if they were appreciated just a little bit more. One of the guys said, and I quote, "The industry just sees me as an endless supply of donations, and they don't care anything about me or my family." And that's wrong. And so I think that being appreciated is so easy. You can appreciate someone so easily. And what we found with the Bee Expo is a lot of the companies that come to our show, all we have to do is take care of them and show appreciation. And lo and behold, they keep coming back. I think there's room for every group to be appreciated a little bit more, whether you're someone who's trying to breed a more resistant bee to Varroa or some other type of malady. Everyone could do a little bit of a better job of showing some respect, but also this is an opportunity for us to rally and to put all this information to use. Let's get our bee clubs organized. That's my thing, is let's get the bee clubs organized. Let's communicate. Let's get involved. You don't have to go to the Bee Expo, but you can communicate. You can send emails out. You can contact Charles with the Bee Cause Alliance, and Blake Shook has a bunch of people that have nothing going on right now that they're just waiting for your email. And so, is there anything that you guys would like to add to that? Get involved.
I think give us your time or give us your money. If we want to boil it down, either get involved, give us time, contact your senators, help form these committees and local clubs, or, make a donation, join one of these organizations, ABF, AHPA, because, APSM, pick your poison and contribute. And a lot of us don't have time, and that's okay. Give us your money. And those are the two really practical things that you can do to make a meaningful difference with the situation.
It really would. And if anyone needs any suggestions, I do have some good ones, and I talk to these people. I know what they're up to. There are ways to waste your money. There are some areas where the money does not get wasted, and it really goes to good stuff. And if you're needing direction in that regard, we can. I know personally multiple bee clubs. You wouldn't know going and speaking at their state conferences because they're not a very well run conference. And I'm not trying to be mean, but some of these organizations have 6-figure bank accounts, and one or two of them I know have $1 million in the bank account just sitting, but they never can agree on what to do with the money. If you're needing an excuse to spend, putting it towards Tropilaelaps research and efforts towards protecting the North American borders is a great place to put that. And Philip Raines has a question. Every club should adopt a legislature and do a hive dive to give them firsthand experience. And I think maybe you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I wonder if we've done a very good job as a bee industry of trying to build bridges outside of our industry. Because I think there's a lot of, like you said, it's not just congressmen and House of Representatives. That would be great. That would be awesome. But there's a lot of people in agriculture. There's a lot of people in other industries that if we can build a good relationship with them, there's opportunities there. Whether we like it or not, we're a very small industry compared to other industries. And to be able to have allies in other industries could be very massive for us. If we were a country, we'd be a very small one. And it would be good for us to build bridges. And I think we've done a little bit of a bad job of that because we're too busy accusing agriculture of being this big, bad person. And talking to most farmers that I know, they wish no ill will on beekeepers.
We would be like the Vatican, though. We're pretty small, but we have a big footprint. You mentioned something there, Cayman, that's interesting because just before I was here, we were recording a podcast with produce moms. And we've got people reaching out to the Almond Alliance and the blueberry growers and the cranberry growers. So as an industry, we are working on that. We have not been really good at it in the past, but we're making an effort to change that.
And I know that both of you guys are doing that, and there's other people starting to see the value in that as well. Brent makes a good comment. Somebody who lives near a senator needs to go and give them free beekeeping lessons. Get them hooked, and they'll join the fight. And honestly, that's not a joke. The best way to get people to care about bees is to get them to become a beekeeper themselves or a honey enthusiast. And one of the cool things that I've seen on a little bit of a segue is on the smaller side of the industry, the commercial guys maybe aren't as involved with this, but we're seeing a lot of creamed honey on like at state fairs. We're seeing hot honeys. This is what the general public wants. This is getting teenagers doing cotton candy honey at the state fair. These things are flying off the shelves. This brings a whole slew of new people into the possibilities of becoming a beekeeper or being sympathetic to what beekeepers need. I think we need to be a little bit more open-minded about how we represent ourselves and the things that we try. So there's just one or two other things to touch up on. Nope. Tropilaelaps is not in the United States. It almost got here, and it'll continue to get closer.
Yeah, there's a few people here that seem to be worried that it was actually here. Okay, I get that. It's not clickbait. You might have misread what Cayman was trying to tell us, but here's the reality. This is a very near miss. This is not a 5-year out or 10-year out or 15-year out. This is a one mistake, and we got big problems. It doesn't have to be 100 mites. It has to be one. Mm-hmm. They're fertilized in the cell. When she comes out, she's ready to roll. One mite. That's all it takes.
And, this is a question that I think we probably don't have the answers for. Maybe you guys can give some pointers. What new viruses will Tropy bring? Or will they just intensify the viruses already affecting the bees? I'm not sure anyone has clear answers fully.
That's a Jeff Pettis, Jeff Williams, Maggie Gill question. And I just want to avoid them. I just don't want to deal with them.
Well, and we just don't know. And that's where, again, we have work to do with the USDA building bridges there. And we can only do so much. This takes time, but we need to do our best. Thanks, everyone, for taking the time for this attention and bringing attention to this matter that is very important for all of us, whether you're a new beekeeper getting in. We don't want to scare you away from the industry. I'm an optimist, but at the same time, every generation has had some type of event happen. You know, it's American foul brood was terrible decades and decades ago. Varroa mites, tracheal mites, Tropilaelaps mites. We don't want anything to do with this new stuff, but eventually one day we are going to have new pests, and we will. So I think it's important that we all work together to find solutions, be creative together, and support one another. That's what this group is for. Blake and Charles, is there anything that we need to add, or are we good for now?
I think that's a great summary. Yeah. Awareness is important.
Awareness is important. So come join us at maybe the Honey Producers, the ABF, the Bee Expo, shameless plug, or any of the other big events that are going on. Meet people. I know some of you are like, well, I'm just a small beekeeper. Like I said, at the Honey Producers, a lot of people were super welcoming there. The relationships is so undervalued. I've never gone to one of these things and gone, wow, that wasn't worth my time. All it takes is one good relationship, and the trip was worth it. And so get involved, be a part of the beekeeping community at that level. And every beekeeper matters. And so get involved in whatever way you can. Thanks everyone for watching. Charles, Blake, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you in the next video.
Thanks, guys.
Okay.